Doesn't sound like a dog's name. Boo Boo does.
Oh, it does.
Come here, Boo Boo.
Who would name their dog Boo Boo?
Welcome to the Gathering podcast called The Greenhouse to help us grow together. I screwed that up big time.
We're going to keep it.
All right. Well, we're rolling with this here today. We have a game.
Sit, Ubu, sit. Good dog.
Yes, Boo Boo.
Half the people out there, like, we're just transported back to the
youth. This was a conversation before we started the podcast, and so we're going to have to acknowledge it. Right now in the comments, you need to tell us, do you think Ubu is a better name for a dog or Boo Boo? Because they didn't agree.
But Ubu is the name of a dog. It's a real dog.
But there was a girl named...
Ubu, sit.
What's that girl?
Honey Boo Boo?
Honey Boo Boo.
But that's a girl.
Yeah.
Isn't there a cartoon character named Boo Boo?
She's in college now.
From Yogi Bear.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Yogi Bear.
There you go. Look, we're getting closer to the dog name.
No, but Ubu is a real dog. Sit, Ubu, sit. Okay. Good dog.
That's great. You want to play a game?
I can't wait.
I bet you can't. Okay, this game is called. You can't look at my sheet here. You can play. You can play
read it even if I could see it.
Oh, okay, good. This game is called Taylor Swift or Lamentations.
I'm going home.
This is going to be great.
Okay, but this is not like, so if you get it wrong, there's nothing against you because this is from The Message.
I wouldn't think there's anything against me if I got it wrong anyway.
Anyway?
Yeah.
Well, I'm just saying, you know.
Right, because obviously you couldn't use like English Standard Version or King James Version.
So I'm saying there's,
it'd be kind of obvious.
Yeah.
That hath broken my heart.
It'd be obvious, right?
Which is essentially to say that Taylor Swift has a pop culture grasp of the English language, but not really a fantastic grasp of it.
Well, we're not translating her from Greek
She's a
and Hebrew.
lyrical genius, I tell you.
If she wrote her songs in Greek and Hebrew, then maybe we could go back and do that.
Yeah.
Okay. You ready? Are you guys ready? Put on your Taylor Swift hats.
Don't have
Get your Swifty.
I'm gonna Swifty on out.
Is I know that I would know her songs if I heard them. I couldn't off the top of my head tell you one song that she has sung.
So I'm gonna go out on a limb here. You're not a Taylor Swift fan.
It's not that I'm not a fan. I just don't care.
I don't care. I liked her older stuff.
Like I hear she's a prophetess of Baphomet. That's getting clipped, isn't it?
Yep.
All right.
We're coming for you, Taylor.
Okay.
There's a difference between not being a fan of somebody and actively disliking that person. Right.
I would say I'm not a fan.
I'm not a fan. I don't care.
I don't care either.
Okay.
It's not my thing.
And yet here we are playing a game.
We are.
About Taylor Swift.
Hey,
did she break up with Travis Kelce yet?
No.
I heard rumors.
They're engaged.
No, they're not. I heard rumors that he was starting to be unhappy with the rules she was giving him.
I will find out. Why?
According to the internet.
Right.
Okay, game. First question. Long were the nights when my days once revolved around you.
That's Lamentations.
Okay, we have one for Lamentations. John?
I'll just say Taylor Swift.
1 point to John.
So it was the revolve around you. That doesn't sound, but because it's The Message, I'm a little iffy.
I know
that doesn't sound like David.
And that's what I mean. It's hard. It's harder because it's The Message.
It's got me all thrown off because it's The Message.
Yeah.
All right, go on.
I could see that. I could definitely see it because when I was.
What song is that from?
No clue.
Well, then it doesn't count.
What is one of her songs?
No, the song's called No Clue.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
You didn't. That's surprised you didn't know that. This next one is called "Take Another Drink of Your Coffee," isn't it, from the song? Okay, anyway, moving on. Walls of insecurity, shifting eyes, and vacancy vanished when I saw your face.
What?
Say that again.
Walls of insecurity, shifting eyes, and vacancy vanished when I saw your face.
I'm going to say T-Swift again because
if that's from Lamentations, it's a horrible translation. But yeah, I'll say Taylor Swift for that reason. It's going to be Lamentations though. 1
point for both of you.
Oh, sheesh. I don't even know how that can be a song though. How do you even?
It sounds so clunky.
I don't know. I'm not a musician, John. You would know.
Never mind. I'm not going to go on my rant about Taylor Swift.
I mean, she is the face of pop culture.
It just goes to show that people listen with their eyes. That's all I'm going to say. Like, she puts on a big show, but like, it's not as good as people think.
Like, if you, for the rest of your life, could only listen to either Taylor Swift or Carrie Underwood, tell me why you'd pick Carrie Underwood.
She sounds good.
I mean, why is she not like the pop sensation that's sweeping the nation?
Is Carrie Underwood pop?
No,
she's pop country.
Pop country.
But, I mean, her songs are better.
Jesus, take the wheel.
I don't love that song.
I just love, like, when you take things like that and you, like, think of them literally. Jesus, take the wheel.
But Taylor Swift is no longer pop country, right? I mean, she's pop. Full pop. That's what I thought. Yeah. Okay.
Like, I could never understand the bumper sticker, God is my co-pilot. Like, people, that was a big deal back in like the 80s and the late 70s.
No,
and I was always like, why isn't he your pilot?
Like,
so I can think of a few people who need God as their co-pilot.
Okay.
Maybe you take the wheel.
All right.
Is it
But
Matt?
why isn't Jesus just already in the driver's seat?
Why isn't he in the driver's seat?
Right. Why? Like, if I'm saying Jesus take the wheel, that means like I only give up control when I'm in trouble.
Well, not necessarily.
I'm not convinced there's a good argument that Jesus is a good driver. He walked everywhere.
I'm just saying I'm more thinking like an airplane.
That is incorrect. That is incorrect. He drove a Honda.
Where like co-pilot,
they were in one accord.
The disciples were all in one accord.
Co-pilot, you're working together.
He's still
I'm still making the case for it's okay.
We're going back and forth telling dad jokes about Hondas and the disciples.
I'm still trying to defend my stance here. I think it's okay. I don't have a problem with it.
I think God should be the air traffic controller.
You want to get freaked out? Don't look into how that stuff works. Just don't look it up.
Like, what do you mean?
How air traffic control works? How there's a shortage of people to do it? And
just don't look into it. By you asking questions, you're looking into it.
Have you ever been in a plane where like you're actually listening in on the conversations between the pilots and the different?
And he's like, oh crap, and then it just goes.
Yeah, no,
whoopsie.
That should be working.
Where does this go? All right, let's play this game some more.
Okay.
So far, we have had zero Bible.
Correct. Okay.
I don't think we will.
Law of averages says next one's got to be Lamentations. Yeah.
I remember it all. Oh, how well I remember the feeling of hitting the bottom.
So let's do that again. Like, you really put yourself into that one.
I remember.
I remember it well.
I remember it all. Oh, how I remember the feeling of hitting the bottoms, because I remember that.
That's Lamentations.
It's got to be Lamentations.
You are correct. Lamentations. Yeah. And why were you so confident? Because Lamentations about lamenting.
I just can't hear Taylor Swift going, oh, how I remember.
Oh, how I remember.
Oh, also, I'm not sure.
Some song.
Does she really, like, is there ever a song where she's like, I hit the bottom? Like, 'cause I feel like her songs are always about how it's everybody else's fault.
She knows, remembers the feeling of hitting.
You didn't like me because I was annoying. Wait.
Okay.
I didn't think you were ready to be talking about Taylor Swift.
Do you want one? Do you want one more?
One more.
I have two more. I'll just give you one.
All right, here we go.
Okay. You'll find out what it's like to get drunk and wake up with nothing.
That's Lamentations.
Have you experienced that?
I didn't write Lamentations.
Have you?
Nope.
No.
Matt was wearing sunglasses this morning.
What?
I'm just kidding.
I'm Irish. I don't get drunk.
You can't
get drunk. Can't get drunk.
I don't think I can medically get drunk.
Matt will die.
Okay. We've gone down a path here.
What does Jesus say about drinking?
Yeah, I don't know. You turned water to wine.
Water you turned into wine.
Yeah. And
what's
he
the next
saved
line
the good
of that
stuff.
song?
Open the eyes of the blind.
That was the next song. What's the next line? There's
no one like you?
Yeah. You popped up on my playlist the other day.
I did?
You did. Yep. Sometimes I'm driving along and all of a sudden I'm like, who is this? I know this song. I'm like,
this voice sounds familiar.
Oh, it's John.
I'm a pretty big deal.
When are you doing another one?
Soon.
Right.
I got some stuff cooking.
Before Easter.
Like how many songs do you have on Spotify right now?
Probably like 4 or 5.
Like, can I put like your name in, like John Holman?
No, they're all under like different bands and
aliases.
Can we post a list of all of the Spotify songs?
If you start putting them under the name Taylor Swift, you get a lot more hits.
Yeah, I tried to publish as the Taylor Swift, and they won't let me. So
you just change. How does she spell her name?
Taylor Swift.
Is it L-O-R or L-E-R?
Taylor.
Yeah, Taylor, and then or maybe like Taylor Fast.
Let's see, I can tell you here.
I would be Taylor, not so Swift.
It's O-R.
All right, so it just goes
Taylor
or Taylor with a U.
Swifter.
Yeah. Yeah, all right, this is great.
This is awesome.
This is just
should we ask some?
knocked it out of the park with this game.
Thank
Steve.
you, appreciate it. So should we move on to some questions that are going to be extremely interesting about your sermon?
Extremely interesting questions.
If you have to tell people that it's going to be interesting, it's probably not.
Did you pick up in any sarcasm? No.
Like if I got up to preach, I'm like, okay, now today's sermon is going to be interesting.
You guys are going to love this one.
My general rule is if people have to tell you something's good, it's probably not, right? So if you're shopping for an apartment and people go, luxury apartments.
Just try it some
Probably
Sunday.
not luxury
All apartments luxury now?
Yeah, you have to. They're that expensive. That's for sure.
I feel like every time I drive by an apartment complex, it says
Is your
luxury
apartment
apartments,
luxury?
and I'm just like,
Matt? Was it?
Not
Does it say luxury? Does it say luxury on the
Is
sign?
there like a definition? Like you have to have something?
No,
in order,
it's
like if it has a door and more than 2 windows, it's luxury.
As long as you're not homeless, you are living the luxurious life. Is what we're learning.
It's like the FDA. You can always find a way around it. You just spell it some other different way.
If you were going to write a Christian song about luxury, what would be like the title and what would be the catch line?
Oh, it's funny because we're in Lamentations. But no, I'm just kidding. I just pull something out of Ecclesiastes, and it's all stupid and pointless.
Ooh,
because it goes away.
So you'd go like with the place
vanity.
like luxury is pointless, without Jesus.
Yeah.
Yeah. Then you could go like that gold ring in your nose. It doesn't matter so much. When you're going out to eat, you have to pay Dutch.
Okay. We've hit
Can you come up with one more line and such?
I have a question for you here about your sermon.
Just reach out and touch.
Are we ready for
What'd
some
you
sermon
have for
questions?
lunch?
Nothing.
Did you have something to munch?
No, did not. Not much. Right. Okay. What do you think Jesus' main point in the parable of the sower was?
I just have to say before we get into this, I was very confused. I've this whole time thought we were making like clothing. And after the sermon, I realized we were talking about farming and planting.
Sowing of the seeds.
So my world has just completely been flipped because of this.
Because of what sowing means?
Because of what sowing means. Yeah.
That happens. It's
fairly common.
Right. Like if you were going to rewrite the parable of the sower, right, and be like,
I totally thought it was about a seamstress.
The sower was sowing thread.
Oh,
and
I don't think it applies quite as well.
Well, you like some of the thread ripped apart because of stress.
Yeah,
and some of the thread ripped apart because of the elements.
See, I was thinking like more knitting might work a little bit better.
I don't know anything about knitting.
Well, you're putting together strings.
Do you know what the little knitting tools
needles?
Are they called needles?
Yeah, knitting is with needles, crocheting's with hooks.
Okay.
I didn't know that. What else?
I don't know.
That's all I know about.
What do you do when you darn socks?
Darn socks?
I don't know what that is.
You guys have never heard that expression?
Is this a Michigan thing?
No? Nobody knows about darning socks? I don't know what it means either.
I can never find that one darn sock.
They're always missing.
No, you have to darn your socks.
I don't know what that is.
Matt's looking it up for us right now. He's going to tell us what it means to darn your socks.
So the only thing I could think of is,
His
like
podcast socks.
Nailing it to your
I feel so old today.
Fireplace.
You guys have never heard of darning socks? Never heard of ubu?
To darn is to stitch up a small hole in a piece of clothing.
Now we just throw it away.
Just buy a new pair.
Yeah, all right.
So do you want to answer my question here?
Yeah, what was the question?
I don't remember what it was.
What's the main point of the sower?
Yeah, so the main point. So if I was going to narrow it down.
Yeah.
That's a good question, because there's really two directions you could go with it, right? So I think like if you want to go with like an action-oriented main point, I would say open your heart to the Word.
Yeah.
That's what I would say. Now, obviously, that has to be unpacked. If I was going to say like more of like a knowledge-based, like what was Jesus trying to make is that not everyone receives the Word.
Yeah. See, that's more where I generally, when I think of that parable, where I go, because it's like you kind of you can't help but reflect on yourself when you read it.
As you should.
Yeah, you put yourself in there, like, okay, well, where do I land in this story? So,
yeah, it's a tricky parable, because in the one sense you could spend all of your time explaining what Jesus meant. There's a lot. I mean, like with some of his parables, you can go into some significant depth because he did in the explanation. You have to be careful. Not all parables can you do that. You have to be careful about going, creating your own depth sometimes. But in this parable, he creates the depth for you. But then you just walk away saying, wow, I really understand that. And I think you've really done yourself a disservice if you haven't asked the big question, which is where do I fit in this parable? Yeah, it's a good point.
That's the main point.
But you have your hat, so no one will notice.
No, they won't. You're right. All right, next question here. What should make us uncomfortable in this particular parable?
Well, what makes you uncomfortable about this parable?
Oftentimes when you kind of like, am I doing enough? Like that's what often is the thing, is like, like it really is up to all of us to plant those seeds, and like, am I doing a good enough job? Am I making excuses? Should I be doing more? Am I called to do more? What more could I do? What about my neighbor? What about my friend? There's just a whole series of questions that kind of comes when you start thinking about it.
It's good.
I just find the idea, right, that some people in our lives may never ever be in a place where they might receive the seed, like that is that's uncomfortable. I think that the desire we have for everybody to know the Lord, I think, that bothers me on a level.
Yeah. I think it's the rocky soil where you have people who receive the word with joy and then fall away. I think that, because I think, like I was going to say, what is Jesus describing in our day? And obviously he was talking to people 2,000 years ago. But what is it? And I think you could make a really strong argument that what he's describing in our day is youth group.
Yep.
Right? Where, like, so many kids are part of the church and they love youth group. And it's a joyful experience. And probably a lot of people my age and your guys' age look back on their youth group experiences. I loved youth group, but then it never really caught. Yeah. Right? And there was never any depth to it. And so the moment they got away from youth group and got into the world, and people were like, Jesus didn't really exist, or, that's hateful, or you're, whatever else, they're like, oh, okay, well, this is hard. So I'm going to not do this anymore.
I think there's a little bit of I think it's overplayed a little bit, like the God's not dead kind of trope, comes out, but it's not even just like they're challenged for the first time. They haven't thought about it. It's, I think sometimes we spare the kids in our church the opportunity of developing the faith that trusts God in the hard things. So it's not even that they're challenged, it's that they hit a hard situation where it requires you to trust God with something. And it's really hard to do that. Faith is a muscle. Right. And I think so often, and this is not just in the church, it's our world. They go from kids to being adults just like that. We're not really good at preparing them to become adults. So what do you do when you're challenged with that actual first hard thing that makes you question whether or not God actually loves you or God cares? And
and it does go beyond just youth group too, right? Like as adults, we're also challenged that sometimes we are going to suffer as Christians, and we should expect that. And I think I don't want to throw shade at other pastors, but I will.
You know who you are.
No, I mean, so like a guy like Joel Osteen, who's always positive, right? Your victory's coming. Your day is coming, and all that. And that's good. That's great. I try to be encouraging too. But the reality is, Jesus calls us to suffer.
Yeah.
And so if you're going into the Christian life thinking this is all, roses and lollipops and all that, then, you're going to be really shocked when you realize the world hates you. And that's what Jesus said. The world's going to hate you because the world hates me.
Yeah. Well, and I think too, obviously we have Jesus as the model, right? Who, and you hit on this in the deep dive when we're talking about men. Jesus was the model. He suffered and he died for the people he loved. And we went on to say, men, in the same way, you will suffer. You need to suffer and be willing to die for the people you love. So we have that example, but then you look at the apostles in the early church who were persecuted. They were brutally murdered in horrible ways just for trying to share the gospel. That's the faith that we are walking in. That's the tradition we're stepping into. We should expect to experience some suffering and hardship. We've just had it so good, specifically in our country, I think for such a long time that we forget that suffering is part of following Jesus.
Yeah, right. Yeah. And I think, we've got this phenomenon in our country and, in Western civilization, really, over the last decade of deconstructing your faith, which is to say, I hit this point where I'm going to say, I'm going to reconsider everything. And, a lot of times the deconstruction is really just, I'm leaving.
Yeah.
Right. Now, every so often you have somebody who says, well, I deconstructed and then I rebuilt my faith and it was healthier. That happens. But most of the time it's I'm leaving the faith. And, we're seeing now, big names like well-known names in evangelicalism. We're saying, I think I'm going to be done with that.
Yep.
Because I don't want to oversimplify it, but it just became too hard for them. As our world goes racing into a level of immorality and impurity and godlessness that, I feel like it's getting worse. There are some people who aren't willing to take a stand against that or aren't willing to say, I think that's wrong because it's going to cost them. And it might cost them relationally. It might cost them financially. It might cost them in status and whatever the cost is. And they just say, I'm not willing to pay that cost. So I'm going to bail out. And I think, that's what Jesus said would happen. And he was pretty clear. He said, look, these people, they receive the word with joy and they stick around for a while. But then he said persecution because of the word comes, because of the truth, and so they bail out. And I was like, well, that's challenging. That's tough. So, what was the question? What's the most
uncomfortable?
Uncomfortable.
Yeah, that's uncomfortable. It. Okay. So, along with the concept of the parable of the sower, my mind also thinks about people in countries where you may not even know about Jesus. You may not even have an opportunity to hear about that. Where does that fall into there, you think?
Well, that's a whole another question, isn't it? I would say, number one, this is one of those questions that everybody's always asks as a gotcha question, right? Mm-hmm. So I'm gonna get you here because you can't answer the question of how a loving God could send people to hell who had never heard of him. Mm-hmm. I can't answer that question, and I do think a loving God would send people to hell who had never heard of him. And actually, the Bible answers the question for us. So Paul is writing in Romans, and it's either chapter 2 or chapter 3 where he gets here, and he talks about our own conscience tells us that we're guilty. Mm-hmm. Everyone who's ever lived knows they are guilty. Everyone who has ever lived knows they have violated their own conscience. So their own inner sense of what's right and wrong, they have violated it. And as such, they are a guilty person. And so the quest for all of humanity is, what can I do to take care of this guilt that I have? It's not God's responsibility to necessarily reveal that to everyone in every time. This is where it gets a little bit tricky. So has God revealed himself to all of humanity? Yes. There have been multiple times in human history when God has revealed himself to the entirety of the human race. Now, at some point, different parts of the human race reject God, reject the knowledge of God, and lose the knowledge of God. That's what Jesus is talking about, right? The seeds on the path get snatched away by Satan. So if I choose to reject God and the knowledge of God, not only am I risking my own eternal fate, I am putting every person who follows me's eternal fate at risk. Because it may be that in my rejection of God and the knowledge of God, now my descendants won't hear the truth about God. And that's essentially what has happened in the world. And so this is a horrible, difficult thing. But that doesn't eliminate guilt, right? Mm-hmm. That doesn't eliminate the need for guilt. And I mean, we could go down the path of people, the stories you hear about people who are looking for God, and, a missionary miraculously shows up and tells them the truth about Jesus. And, I don't want to race down that today, but the reality is all of us must give account for what we have done. Mm-hmm. And at the end of the day, all of us are guilty, but for the grace of God, but for the mercy of God. And God is not, God doesn't have to do that. Yeah. He chooses to. That's why it's grace. He's not. It's not demanded that he do that for us.
Yeah, and ultimately, we're not the ones judging anyway. I mean, it's not.
No, I firmly believe that God will always do the right thing.
Right.
So
that goes along to the trust thing. Is it?
Yeah. If he decides he wants to handle salvation differently in some other way, in some other place, in some other time, that's his call, not mine.
Right.
All I know is what he's revealed to us.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah. I also, whenever that comes up, I always think of the truth that this is actually the tragic reality of sin. Right. Is that there are people who will not hear the good news of Jesus. And that reality, though, speaks to the urgency of the mission that God has given us, which is to go and share the gospel. And so whenever we hear those things and think about those questions, I think we immediately have to go, yeah, this is horrible, but this is why we're here.
Right.
And we need to remind ourselves of that.
And I feel that's where, some of the urgency does come from, because if you're firmly believing that someone who's never had the opportunity to hear about Jesus, their life could be saved because of it. Right. It gives you a lot more urgency versus saying, well, they never heard about it, and then God's going to, show them grace.
Yeah,
obviously, we're not the judge of anyone. God is the judge.
Yeah. If I can just take a minute and just point out one of the, kind of interesting big inconsistencies of the critics of Christianity. Uh-huh. So the people who will come to you and say, well, how can you believe in a God that would send people to hell who have never heard of him, right? That's a big argument. They love that argument. Those very same people are the people who will condemn you if you try to take the message of Jesus to the unreached people, right? Why are you trying to bring your hateful message to them, or why are you taking them? Let them be on their own.
Don't impose your worldview.
You can't have it both ways, right? If you're going to say, God is at fault for not revealing himself, then you can't also say, well, God's people aren't allowed to reveal him. I mean, it's one of those wild inconsistencies that is just frustrating to me. But, I guess it's hard to argue consistently when you don't have the truth on your side.
It's hard to be sane in an insane world.
Right. Yeah. All right. What's the next question, Steve?
Next question. I know you're just can't wait here. Okay. What should
Steve's in a great mood, it feels like.
What should encourage us about this parable? So we just said,
I kind of feel like before you ask this question, I feel like maybe we should have baptized you today.
Why? Why?
So for those who you don't know, so we actually shot an instructional video today about baptism, like for people who are going to be getting baptized. And it was going to be you, but in the end it ended up being Jeremy.
Yeah. Can we talk about how great an example that is of Christ stepping in and taking Steve's place?
Yeah, because frankly the water was really cold. But the reason I said I think it would have woken you up a little bit.
I'm asleep.
I feel like you're just a step behind.
Okay.
Yeah, you're not your usually energetic self.
Okay.
Have you not had a super calf coffee today?
I need a second cup of coffee.
Yeah. What's the coffee you really like to drink that gets you all hyped up?
Nitro cold brew.
Yeah. If you've never been around Nitro cold brew Steve,
it's the best of Steve.
It is. Yeah.
It's pretty great.
Yeah, he's kind of bouncing off the wall. All right, what was the question?
Okay, I have to go back to my questions here. What should encourage us about the parable?
Yeah. What should encourage us about the parable? What do you think?
Well, that it's not up to us alone.
You just stole mine.
Okay.
Go with it, though.
Yeah, that hey, if you're really good at planting seeds, keep doing that. If you're really good at cultivating those seeds, keep doing it. Know that also that, like, if you have a friend who really wants to know about Christ but doesn't, like, you say, like, hey, I can do what I'm in control of. I can plant those seeds, but ultimately we're all in this together, and that we're all kind of taking part in it. Because, when I think of my own faith, I mean, there's a lot of people who are along in my journey.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Cool. You want to add anything on that?
I think it's the inverse of what I said earlier. There are people who are ready, and that's encouraging. Like you we don't have to. I think we're so afraid of sharing the gospel and being rejected, and that's true. That's uncomfortable, but how do you know if that person's ready or not until you do? You know, and so the encouraging piece of this is that there are people, when you share the gospel with them, they will receive it and they will hear what they need to hear. You will be a vessel through which God will speak to that person. And I think that that's a really cool thing for us to remember.
Think about this, and this kind of builds on what you were saying. If this parable is true to life, when we have spiritual conversations with people and make spiritual asks of people, we should expect to get rejected way more than we get accepted, right? So, like, whether the spiritual ask is, hey, can I talk to you about Jesus? Or, hey, would you like to accept Jesus? Or, hey, would you come to church with me? It could be any of those. We should expect at least 75% of the time to get rejected. Which means that when I get rejected, I can celebrate, right? Because every time I get rejected, I'm like, hey, Jesus told me that was going to happen. All right. And every time I get rejected, I can say, that's cool, because now I'm one rejection closer to someone accepting.
It's an odds game a little bit.
Yeah, it is. And so, because we know that we're going to get rejected more than we get accepted, but because we also know we are going to get accepted, then, we should be plowing through the no's. Like, I'm going to go for as many no's as I can, because I know it probably takes 3 no's to get to every yes. So I'm going to go for it. So I think that's, it's maybe backwards thinking, but I think it's encouraging.
Yeah, definitely.
The mathematical argument for why you should share the gospel. That'd be fun to flesh out.
Well, we actually might get to that later in the series.
Okay. Oh boy.
I don't know if we'll do a mathematical argument.
Yeah.
But that might be fun though.
That'd be fun.
Yeah. All right.
All right. Well, thanks for joining us.
Wait, do we need to talk about anything?
We do.
I feel like we do.
Easter?
Well, I think we should talk about Easter just for a quick second.
Okay.
Can we do that? We didn't talk about that beforehand.
What, Easter?
Yeah, it's coming in a couple weeks. So just a quick for our people.
Yeah.
So what happened in our parking lot this Sunday, Steve?
It was over full. We actually had to park people in spaces that were not spaces.
Yeah. So a couple good things about this, right? Number one, that's an awesome problem to have. Number two, Steve had a team in place to handle it.
Yeah.
So awesome job, Steve. But what that means is we gotta do something about it. So we're working on creating more spaces, and by Easter we will have more spaces. Right, but can I encourage people to do something?
Yeah, let's encourage them.
Let me encourage you to think about something between now and Easter, because we're having lots of people show up, which is awesome, and we're excited about it. If you can bring as few cars as possible to church, that would be awesome.
Carpool.
Because there's some families that bring 2, maybe even 3 cars sometimes.
Pick up some friends on your way.
It's because they're serving and that kind of thing. But anything you could do, even if it's like saying to a friend, hey, I'll meet you at Kroger, and then we'll ride in together from Kroger, or we'll meet you right up here at Panera.
Yeah.
We'll leave a car.
We
at Panera.
live right next door to our neighbors who come here.
Yeah.
So hey, let's go together.
Yeah.
Service
so if you know somebody who lives around the corner and you can park
actually,
at there.
Maria can't either.
I was trying to talk Becca into coming in at 5:30 with me, but she didn't.
She said no.
She said no.
Right.
So.
And here's the real reason for this is the last thing we want is for somebody to show up here who needs to hear about Jesus and leave because they can't find a parking spot. Well, that's the last thing we want to happen.
But we're already there. We're already at that point where if we're, more than 75, 80% full as a parking lot, people are going to pull in. They're already thinking that.
Yeah.
So the more help we can get with it at any time of year is great.
Yep.
Come to the 8:15.
Say
come to 9:30.
Both of those, for sure. Yeah. So
just every little bit helps.
Yep. Yeah,
it's actually a different perspective in relationship to what we talked about Sunday.
Yeah.
One of the easiest ways that you can plant a seed is to come to an earlier service.
Yep.
Not
how do we get that at the end? Dang it. Rewind. Lead with that, John.
Here, can we film a little clip here at that we can play at the beginning of the podcast?
Yep.
Okay. All right.
If you love Jesus, you'll come to 8:15.
I wasn't going to say that. But I was going to say, if you really want the most important part of this podcast, fast forward to the last 2 minutes.
Enough said.
All right. Are we done now?
We are done. Thanks.
All right.
Bye.